Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
Let us join in a spirit of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we deepen into our service and share our opening words for this morning, a poem by Mary Oliver called The Swan. Did you too see it drifting all night on the black river? Did you see it in the morning, rising into the silvery air, an armful of white blossoms? A perfect commotion of silk and linen as it leaned into the bondage of its wings, a snowbank, a bank of lilies, biting the air with its black beak. Did you hear it, fluting and whistling, a shrill dark music like the rain pelting the trees, like a waterfall knifing down the black ledges? And did you see it, finally, just under the clouds? A white cross streaming across the sky, its feet like black leaves, its wings like the stretching light of the river. And did you feel it in your heart, how it pertained to everything? And have you too finally figured out what beauty is for? And have you changed your life? We join Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalice. Would Pat please come up to light the chalice, which is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you are on Zoom and have your chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video to share while we light them. We are in good company. These are words by Charles Eisenstein. The radiance of that which wants to be born illuminates the shadows, bringing them in the light of awareness, that they may be healed.
Just walking and talking with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Singing and praying with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, saying I'm freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
To stimulate our discussion today, we will view Climate, a New Story with Charles Eisenstein. This documentary shows us how we can reframe our thinking. Our Earth is not simply a resource, it is complex, living, and fragile. We are, as the seventh principle expresses, part of a complex web of life.
What world do we want to live in? That's the question, not can we survive and can we continue to grow the economy? What if we could sustain business as usual? What if we could install, carbon-sucking machines and bleach the sky with sulfur aerosols to maintain constant temperatures and continue to ruin life on Earth until we have a concrete world with hydroponic factories, synthetic food, and digital VR displays of all the nature that's been lost, and rising GDP the whole time? What if we could do that? Do we want to do that? The geomechanical view is basically understands Earth as a complicated machine. So it's like in a diesel engine. If the air-fuel mixture is wrong, then the engine won't perform well. So if levels of greenhouse gases are too high, then the planet is not going to perform well. Whereas if we understand Earth as a living being, then we might say, okay, what will make the planet more resilient to higher levels of greenhouse gases? Because I think that if we cut greenhouse gases to zero, even if we did that overnight, if we continue to degrade the organs and tissues of this living being, then the planet will die of organ failure, even if carbon dioxide emissions are reduced to zero, because this is not a machine. I'm advocating that we reformulate our basic environmental narratives, and especially the climate narrative, so that it comes from the understanding that Earth is a living being and not a complicated machine. The living planet view is familiar to a lot of people because of Gaia theory, that essentially says Earth, if not alive, is like a living being. It maintains homeostasis. It has many qualities of life. Most scientists would not say that it's actually alive. But I think we need to go to the place of relating to Earth as a living being and even a sacred being. So we have a planet that is severely degraded. The rainforests, the mangrove swamps, the wetlands, the kelp forests, the seagrass meadows, the water, the soil, all of these are at a fraction of their former level of vitality and health, which means that this Earth is much less able to maintain a stable climate and to deal with whatever challenges and fluctuations happen, whether it's human emissions, CO2 emissions, or volcanic emissions, or whatever, fluctuations in the sun. The planet is much less able to be resilient when its organs are so degraded. So that means that if we hadn't reduced our tree count to half of what it used to be, if we hadn't turned vast areas of every continent into deserts, I don't think that 400 parts per million would be a problem. But in fact, we've done the opposite. We've made life so much less able to handle challenges that greenhouse gases, I think, are a serious threat. They're very destabilizing. And that's a different view than the standard global warming, runaway global warming narrative, but it's not entirely contradictory to it either. The production of fossil fuels also does damage in other ways that I think ultimately, from the living planet view, might even be more damaging. The way that it destroys whole ecosystems. I mean, you've seen probably the photographs of the Albertan tar sands and just the ruin caused by them, or mountaintop removal, or the oil spills. When we understand Earth as alive, I mean, imagine like that's happening to the cells and tissues in your body. Like whole swaths of them are getting poisoned and destroyed. Then how are you going to maintain a healthy body temperature? Maybe that's extending the metaphor too far, but that's the situation that we're in. So from the living planet view, we understand that the organs of Gaia are essential, especially those that are still intact, like the Amazon, like to some extent the Congo, like some other places on Earth that are smaller but still intact. These are reservoirs of health. These are where Gaia's memory of health even is located. We need to protect these areas. The Amazon is a living being in and of itself, and we just have a very superficial understanding of how that interrelates to the Gaian physiology. So if you reduce the Amazon to how much carbon that it sequesters, you're going to miss out on all of these other physiological effects. So first priority, these places must be held sacred. If we do not do that, then even if we compensate for the lost carbon from the Amazon, this planet is still going to spin out of control. Second priority is to repair, regenerate, and heal the organs that have been damaged, particularly forests and soil. Soil is probably the most important organ of the planet, and of course it's related to the trees and to the prairies and to all the other ecosystems. So regenerative agriculture, for example. From the carbon lens, you can also justify this. It's probably by far, I would say it's by far the fastest way to take carbon out of the atmosphere. There are farmers and ranchers out there who are building topsoil at just phenomenal rates. In school we learned it takes 500 years to build an inch of topsoil, but there are farmers out there who are doing it in 1 year, taking huge amounts of carbon out of the atmosphere. So, okay, third priority is to stop poisoning all the tissues with herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, toxic waste, pharmaceutical waste, sunscreen, et cetera, that reduces the resiliency of the planet universally on like a tissue level as opposed to an organ level. Like, we've got to put a halt to this 90-year experiment. What will happen if we douse the whole landscape with insecticide again and again? Like, are we surprised now that insect populations have declined everywhere? It's not just because of that, though. I think a second and really important and unrecognized cause is the depletion of megafauna that reverberates down through the food chain. So, like, we don't even have to understand why. If we're coming from a living Earth perspective, we know that this is important. Fourth priority is to reduce fossil fuel emissions. And this is controversial to put this as fourth priority. However, if you hold the first three priorities, you're necessarily going to have to reduce fossil fuel emissions, because you can't hold ecosystems sacred and continue to frack and drill and strip mine and pipeline. So the fourth priority is actually a product of the other three, and it all comes from the same perspective of let's do everything we know how to do to participate in the healing of the planet. That's why we're here at this point in time. First the healing, and then to bring even more life to this world. I think that the appropriate tactics vary in every situation. I don't have a formula that you should do this kind of action here and that kind of action there. But the tactics need to come from an understanding of what we're serving here. We're serving, yeah, on one level you could say the protection of life on Earth, or the healing of life on Earth. On another level, you might also say that we're serving a change in our deep narratives, in our mythology, that names who we are, why we're here, and what's real. So I think that part of that understanding is understanding of each other, and even of the people that we demonize, that actually you are here to serve life too. And it might be difficult in your situation, but you're the same as I am. Instead of demonizing you and holding you as an irredeemable polluter or greedy or an enemy, and thinking that the only solution is going to be to dominate you, to conquer you, to win a battle. By doing that, we make enemies of people who wouldn't necessarily have to be enemies if there were some way to invite them into alliance, and to speak to that part of themselves that if they really knew what was happening, they wouldn't want to do that. The despair that a lot of people feel about the future of this Earth draws from the same theory of change and the same understanding of reality that the problem comes from. Basically, the theory of change is that you exert a force on a mass and something changes. So the more force you have, the greater power you have to change the world. From that theory of change, sorry, the powers that be in the system, they have a lot more force than you do, and you're never going to have enough power to change anything. But maybe the world doesn't work like that. Like, there are other ways to change the world besides dominating others by force. For me, hope lies in these things. Hope lies in understanding that nature, or let's say other beings, can be our allies, because we're tapping into another world of cause and effect that puts us in the right place at the right time, saying the right words to the right person, awakening in them what has been awoken in us, bringing them into greater courage in their service as well. Maybe the change happens that way. And when we understand that we just don't really know how this world works, and if anything, the failure of our civilization should teach us that we actually don't know. It should bring us to a point of humility. From that point of humility, anything is possible.
It also seems to me that one of the major reasons that our ecosystems are in trouble is too many people. We've got 8 or 9 billion people instead of 1 billion people, and all of those people want food to eat, and all sorts of other things that draw on the resources of the world. We are now overdrawing the bank account, so to speak, and the only practical solution I can see is to give a pile of money to Planned Parenthood and everybody else so that people only have children that they want and are easily able to not have 6 children instead of 1 or 2.
Maybe a question on the idea about population and what the real problem is, at least today. Is the problem too many people, or is the problem the distribution system for food?
Like, all of these priorities are never, ever going to happen. Like, the only way anything is going to change is if those who have real power, the power of states, real resources, and real wealth, nothing is ever going to change. We really are doomed. There is no hope. The children who grow up today are going to inherit a world worse than it is today, and their children are going to inherit a world even worse than that. And it's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse until it's pretty much too late. I'm going to keep driving my car. We're going to keep using electricity. We're going to keep flushing the toilet. We're going to keep doing all these things. We're not going to change.
Or the concept of humans or us treating the earth and all of our relatives, animals and plants and even rocks and trees as relatives, and having responsibility, taking responsibility for our care, realizing the gifts that they give to us all the time and our interconnection with them. That we have a deep relationship with them, and realizing that we can't keep taking from them without giving back, and realizing our responsibility to them.
The food distribution, and I think making it normal to grow your own food, even if it's your sprouts on a windowsill, or just making it possible for those people who don't have access to growing food to have access, to have a plot of community garden, even to grow whatever foods they need for part of the year. And that has to become our way.
Yeah, I think we found during COVID that our centralized or hyper centralized food system can cause problems in dangerous situations. And so I think there's a lot of movement in other parts of the world as well as around here to do something about that.
So I work for UPS, and one of my greatest the things I get most excited about is helping small family farms rejuvenate. And one of the ways they're doing that is with the regenerative agriculture that he spoke about. And they're finding a market for their seeds, for their meat, and finding it all over the U.S. And it's resonating, and it tastes really good. And those are popping up just outside Bismarck, but all over the state. And so if we seek those places out and find a market for them, that's another way that we can encourage that type of agriculture, because that really is that, like you spoke about, recreating topsoil and sequestering carbon in the ground. When we think about water use and carbon use per individual is really small, but agriculture, especially in the US, uses so much. And so more responsible farming practices can have a really big impact. Thank you.
The problem is our first world lifestyles. We want to live this first world lifestyle. We don't want to go back to living primitive anymore. I mean, like, because we like all this technology that we have, we want to buy our TVs and yada, yada, yada and stuff. But so like, yeah, electric cars aren't the solution, because we got to despoil the environment just to maintain the basic like level of technology that we have today. I mean, and we can just talk, oh, we could do like, bicycling. We can go bicycling and recycle and all that stuff like that, and we can compost and, and grow our own gardens and stuff, whatever. Like all that stuff is like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon.
Well, actually, there are things that we can do, but it takes something huge like COVID to make us do them. I mean, we have a huge number of people working from home who used to drive every day to work, using up gasoline, using up cars. And what we need to do is find other ways to change the way we do business daily. And I don't really see it happening unless we get a kick to the rear equivalent to COVID.
But what if, like the speaker was telling us, we don't understand the system. And what if COVID was an attempt by the earth to try to correct? Well, I'm just going to throw this out there, just twist it a little bit. The universe doesn't care if we exist. It doesn't. And if we destroy it, we keep thinking of it as a problem for us. But maybe we should stop thinking of that as a problem for us. I mean, because we want to fix the climate so we can live here. Well, think about it post-humanity, maybe. Maybe that's going to be the solution. Once people can't live here because we destroy it, life's going to go on. There's still going to be bacteria. Maybe some other life form's going to evolve that's going to have a little bit different and maybe a little bit more success in being able to control and manage the earth.
Throughout human history that we know of as human beings on this planet, there's been crises. There's been the world's going to come to an end. This isn't the first time human beings have said we're all doomed. I think the idea that we're all doomed has been around maybe since as long as human beings have been here, thinking that the end of the world is coming. And at various times, things change, things move forward, things move backwards. And we could make a case that in some parts of the world, things are moving backwards in a rapid clip. But as Faith said, they're moving forward in other places. And so it's like, we're here. And just thinking of the number of people and the number of things that you do, each of us maybe, or that we see happening in even our own community, that would help send things in a different direction. Do people change things? It's emotional. It's feelings. It's what appeals to our hearts and our guts more than to our heads. And that is a lot of the reason we're here together, is to have that connection together. And that is maybe a bigger force than all the information in the world to make change happen. Thank you.
We will extinguish our chalice with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And the world will be a better place, and the world